Germany and the US share many cultural roots and have influenced each other culturally for a long time. But despite the influence, Germany is still a unique country with many elements that might be surprising or even shocking to Americans who come here to live or just to visit. In this video, we're going to look at 5 of those things that you might be surprised by in Germany. Los geht's. First, let's talk a little bit about German fashion. I'm willing to bet that because of stereotypes about Germans being very serious, strict, and efficient, some people might think that by extension, they also dress very formally and conservatively. Or, since so much of German popular culture includes things like Oktoberfest, the Alps, and Oompa music, all of which are Bavarian by the way, people might mistakenly think everyone in Germany walks around wearing traditional clothing like lederhosen and dirndls. Well, I'm here to tell you that that's not at all how it is here. Germans in general actually dress very casually and in modern styles. German fashion can generally be described as being practical, comfortable, and understated, with a focus on functionality and quality. The average German on a typical day wears sneakers or walking/hiking shoes, jeans, a solid colored t-shirt, and depending on the time of the year, a light jacket. And yes, they do sometimes wear sandals with socks. So that stereotype is true. Because the weather changes so much here, from hot to cold and windy to rainy, Germans often wear lots of layers so they can quickly adjust to whatever Mother Nature throws at them. They also generally don't dress very formally. Standard office wear is business casual, often including nice jeans and sneakers. It's actually uncommon to see someone wearing a tie here. And even our politicians are more casual. Just look at these two guys. It's also rare to see women wearing high heels, probably because of how impractical they are on Germany's many cobblestone streets. People here seem to generally wear more muted colors like blues, tans, and grays, but you'll see some colorful outfits occasionally, except not much in the younger parts of Berlin like Friedrichshain and Kreuzberg, where pretty much everyone just wears black. Germans usually don't wear clothes with brand names prominently displayed on them either. But some popular brands you see people wearing here include Adidas, Fjällräven, Jack Wolfskin, and Camp David. That last one is particularly odd since for some strange reason it's named after the presidential retreat in the US. I have no idea how that one came about. Another one I find odd is when I see Germans wearing shirts emblazoned with the NASA logo. I have no idea how or why that one caught on here either. If anyone can explain it, please let me know in the comments. Okay, let's move on. Now, let's talk about something that's famous, or maybe infamous, around the world, the German Autobahn, which is the network of freeways that spans the country. The perception from outside is that all freeways in Germany are like racetracks where you can just drive like a maniac and there aren't any rules at all. Well, I'm here to tell you that that's not exactly the truth. Germany is, after all, a country that lives by its rules and regulations. So, here's the real story. About 70% of the Autobahn in Germany has no speed limit. In these areas, which are mostly rural, there is a recommended speed limit of 130 kilometers per hour or 80 miles per hour. But that's not enforced. On the other 30% of the Autobahn, which lies in more populated areas, there definitely are speed limits and they are strictly enforced. As you can see from this table of fines, I would say that you should probably avoid going over the speed limit here. In my experience, driving across the country, the speed limit on the Autobahn often fluctuates, and it seems like the sections without a speed limit are often pretty short, so you really got to pay attention to the signs. Now, Germany is the only country in Europe that actually has roads without a speed limit. So, you would think that not having a speed limit would lead to a massive number of road accidents. But, as you can see here, traffic fatalities are lower in Germany than in many other European countries. And they're also much lower here than in the US. However, fatalities would likely be even lower if the whole Autobahn had a speed limit. Personally, I'm in support of speed limits. I think 130 kilometers per hour or 80 miles per hour is more than enough. And the German public agrees with me. Surveys show that 60% of Germans are in favor of a nationwide 130 km/h speed limit. The German government, particularly members of the Green Party and the Social Democratic Party, have tried repeatedly to implement a nationwide speed limit, but they haven't yet been able to make this change. Here's hoping it happens eventually. Until then, I recommend you take the train instead. The next thing that's kind of surprising here might seem like it's pretty minor, but it can cause some confusion, especially for Americans. In the US, when you walk into a building from the street, you enter the building on what Americans call the first floor. Well, in Germany, it's not the first floor. Instead, it's the ground floor or Erdgeschoss, also known as the EG or even zero. Now, what Americans would call the second floor is the first floor in Germany. This is what's known as the Erste Obergeschoss or first above floor, also known as the 1OG. Incidentally, basements are called the Untergeschoss or underfloor or UG. Like I said, this may not seem like a big deal, but it can get confusing if you're used to floors being labeled differently. And it's just something people don't really think about much in the US, since apartment numbers there usually make it clear which floor you're on. But here in Germany, there usually aren't any apartment numbers at all, so you have to go by the floors. This can be particularly confusing when dealing with the government or with contractors, because they will ask you what floor you're on. So just make sure you tell them the right floor. Alright, now this one is really different. Let's say you're walking around, or more likely driving around an American city, and you come into an area that has a lot of graffiti. You're immediately going to think, oh no, this must be a bad neighborhood. It's not safe. I better get out of here. This idea is pretty ingrained in American culture, even though it's not really true, even in the US. Think of some of the nicer areas of New York City, San Francisco, and Miami that have a lot of graffiti. So, coming to Germany, many Americans may be surprised or even shocked at the amount of graffiti everywhere. And they may assume the city they're in is unsafe or crime-ridden. Well, they would be wrong. Graffiti is actually very common throughout Germany, especially in large cities like Berlin, Hamburg, and Frankfurt. Of course, it's not as prevalent in richer neighborhoods, but you'll generally see it all over, and it's not considered to be a big problem. So don't worry. If you see some graffiti, it doesn't necessarily mean that the area is unsafe. It's just something you'll have to get used to, especially if you live in a big city in Germany. Personally, I enjoy street art like murals, which I prefer over tagging, which can definitely be ugly and disruptive. But even if you see some tagging, it doesn't mean the place is unsafe. As a side note, I've lived in Berlin for 5 years now, and I have to say that it seems like the amount of street art and graffiti has either become stagnant or might even be decreasing some here. This wall, for example, by the Savini-Platz train station has some graffiti, but it hasn't changed since I've moved here. I'm not sure if this is because of Berlin is cracking down more, or if gentrification is having an impact on this. Anyways, I should mention there are some really fancy cities in Europe like Paris and Vienna that also have a lot of graffiti. So there's really no need to worry about graffiti, just enjoy the creativity and the expression. This last one is one of my biggest pet peeves. Though, let me start with the caveat that you can easily access English programming through all of the typical streaming services here. But when you watch cable television here, you'll quickly find that Germans love to dub everything. In fact, most English language shows and movies here are dubbed into German. And for some reason, subtitles are not really a thing here either. In other words, they record right over the actors, often using voices that are completely different than the originals. There's a whole industry here dedicated to dubbing. In fact, Germany has the most foreign movie dubbing studios per capita in the world. I personally hate dubbing. I think it completely ruins the artistic integrity of movies and TV shows, so I avoid watching anything that's dubbed. The voices are just so far off that it's distracting and it really ruins it for me. I think it also makes it impossible to take the program or the movie seriously. A really good example is something like The Simpsons or South Park.
Mich können Sie nicht feuern. Ich bin der Einzige, der weiß, wie man die Brennelement-Lademaschine entklemmt.
Und nur ich bin qualifiziert, die Filteranlage für gasförmige Verunreinigungspartikel zu steuern.
Mich können Sie auch nicht feuern.
Wieso nicht?
It's just unwatchable. And they usually don't give you any other option. Not only that, the Germans also like to change movie titles here to something completely different. This can be quite annoying, but also quite comical. Here are a few examples. Fast Times at Ridgemont High is Ich glaub ich stehe im Wald, or I think I'm standing in the woods. Tremors is Im Land der Raketenwürmer, or in the land of rocket worms. Airplane, one of my all-time favorite movies, is Die unglaubliche Reise in einem verrückten Flugzeug, or The Incredible Trip in a Crazy Plane. Monty Python and the Holy Grail, another one of my favorites, is Die Ritter der Kokosnuss, or Knights of the Coconut. I mean, that's just completely ridiculous. Apparently, Germany isn't the only European country that's big into dubbing. It's also done in France, Italy, and Spain, among others. You'll note, however, that dubbing is not really done in the Netherlands or in the Scandinavian countries. Hopefully, one day soon, Germany will follow their example. Okay, there you have it. Some more things that are interesting, different, and surprising about Germany. And there's a lot more where that came from. So stay tuned for more in future videos. But that's it for now. I hope to see you again soon. Tschüss, bis später!